Biodiversity is the variety of living organisms on Earth. It includes all animals, plants, fungi and microorganisms, and the habitats these organisms depend on. Pre-planning. Consider the impacts on biodiversity at the planning stage of every project. You should include ecologists and stakeholders early to carry out ecological surveys and environmental impact assessments. This will allow you to map the species and habitats present on site, identify the legal requirements for any protected species, habitats or non-native species found, and identify the correct measures to protect and enhance biodiversity. When designing your site, use tools such as the mitigation hierarchy to clearly define and establish how to improve the biodiversity value of the project. The hierarchy gives top priority to avoiding negative biodiversity impacts, followed by minimizing, restoring and, finally, offsetting any impacts. Non-native species. Non-native species are those that have been introduced outside of their native range. A small proportion of these go on to cause negative impacts on the environment, economy and human health. These are known as invasive non-native species. All reasonable steps should be taken to stop these being introduced or spreading. Common invasive non-native species you may come across include Japanese knotweed, giant hogweed, Himalayan balsam, rhododendron, American signal crayfish, and American skunk cabbage. Before starting work on site, you should consider the following. You should identify the presence of non-native species before works start. If they are present, ensure you understand the risks and implications of managing it. Seek advice from a suitably qualified ecologist or specialist contractor. Where there is a risk of species being introduced, spread within, or moved off-site, ensure mitigation measures are considered at the planning stage. Consider phasing the development to allow time to deal with the non-native species. Include details and locations within all relevant site method statements. Where species require long-term management, for example Japanese knotweed, ensure a site management plan is put together that addresses all issues associated with it. Nominate a designated clerk of works to manage the issues on your site. And ensure you have the appropriate authorizations for these works. Even if non-native species aren't present on your site, you should consider how they may be introduced and identify measures to prevent this. All staff and contractors should be briefed through toolbox talks or site inductions to ensure they are aware of what non-native species look like and the issues associated with them. When working with any non-native species, it is important to practice good site hygiene. Record areas that are contaminated with non-native species within the management plan, isolate with fencing and put up restricted access signs. Staff and contractors working on or between sites should ensure clothing and footwear are clean to prevent spread. Tracked vehicles should not be used within an infested area. Where cross-contamination is possible, i.e. from one site to another, consider designating plant or machinery to specific sites. All vehicles leaving an infested area or that have transported contaminated soils or materials must be thoroughly cleaned in a designated washdown area. All pumps and pipework should be cleaned before use, and inlet pipes should be positioned away from water plants, just below the surface of the water. All wash water and materials left after vehicles have been washed must be contained, collected and disposed of appropriately. Protected species. A number of species of animals and plants found in the wild are protected from being harmed or disturbed. You may be committing an offense if you capture, kill, injure or disturb any protected animal. And you may be committing an offense if you pick, collect, cut, uproot or destroy any protected plant. It is important to plan and manage works where protected species are present. Collect preliminary ecological information from the client. Seek advice from a suitably qualified ecologist or specialist contractor. Identify any seasonal requirements and timings. You should identify whether the site is within or close to a designated site or protected area. Only remove trees and shrubs out with the bird breeding season, which is typically February to August, and check for nesting birds before removal. Communicate ecological constraints, restrictions and requirements to all relevant staff and subcontractors. Control measures should be included in all relevant site documents, including risk assessments and method statements, and should be monitored and maintained throughout the project. Tree protection. Some trees are protected by a tree preservation order. You will need planning permission to remove, prune, cut down, lop, top, or ring bark any tree covered by the order. You should identify trees to be retained and removed during the project design phase. Check with the local authority if any tree preservation orders are in place. Avoid activities that could damage the roots of trees. And hand dig when digging in the vicinity of trees cannot be avoided.